Hey everyone, I'm Alex.
And I'm Kirsten.
And tonight, Kirsten's telling us a story about a haunted question. No, a murdering question.
Yeah, we're going to call it a killer question.
All right, tell us about this killer question.
Okay, so it's a very delicate question. So it's often referred to as the delicate question
Okay.
in this circle of people. So we're going back to the 1800s.
Oh, wait. Are you going to tell me what the question is?
Yeah. So everyone's been in a situation where they've had to ask a delicate question to someone that they cared about. And then there are some questions considered so delicate or deadly that you never ask them unless it's the worst possible situation. On February 6th of 1821, 4 young men are standing on the deck of a small boat in the Atlantic Ocean. The sun was out, it was warm, and the water was a beautiful blue, but none of these men were paying any attention to the world around them. They were standing in a circle, staring at each other in complete silence. Finally, one of the 4 men spoke. His name was Owen Coffin, and he was 18 years old. Owen and the 3 other men had grown up on the water. In fact, they were all of them were from Nantucket, which is a small island off of Massachusetts.
It's not just a poem.
Yeah, I know. In the 1800s, the main industry was whaling, so hunting whales for their oil, which is now illegal in most countries except for 4. But all of them had been on the water since they were little. They learned how to sail. They were good at sailing. So, and because they were good at sailing and they had been on the water since they were little, they knew about a specific customs that'll go along with the sea and how to behave and how to conduct yourself.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
One of these particular customs is what Owen was wanting to talk about in this very serious circle of them all standing there. Owen, in a very hushed tone, asked what sailors refer to as the delicate question, or we're calling it the deadly question.
So he asks the question.
He does. He asked the question of the other 3 men. After Owen spoke, the other men in the circle's eyes got wide and their mouths dropped open, and then the silence came over the group. Not that they were talking that much already. They were already just kind of staring at each other. The captain of the ship was George Pollard, and he was 28 years old, and he was actually Owen's older cousin. So what George wanted to say to Owen's question was no, but he didn't say that. Instead, he just put his hands over his mouth and stared at Owen and the other 2 men, who were also teenagers. One was named Charles and the other was named Barzillai. As George was looking at the other 3 men, he realized that their answer was a resounding yes. They knew that it had to be yes, that they didn't really have another choice, and they had to all answer yes to this. And even though George could override them because he was the captain, he didn't. He knew with this question, it wouldn't matter, even if he tried to overrule them. So with his hands over his mouth, he just shook his head yes.
What the heck is this question?
We're getting there. You gotta be patient. Let the story develop.
This is so bizarre. There's 4 guys standing on a ship.
Yes.
Someone asks a question, and everyone's like, oh, I can't believe you did that.
Yeah. You ready?
I'm baffled.
I know. That's the point. Okay. With everyone agreeing yes, Owen slowly reached down and gets the logbook from underneath one of the seats behind him. He then opened it to the back where it was blank and ripped out a piece of paper. He then began to rip the paper into strips. First, he ripped 3 identically long strips of piece of paper and showed them to the men, and they all nodded their heads yes, that they agreed these were all the same size. Then Owen rips one smaller piece of paper and shows it to the men, and they all agree that's the short one.
So they're kind of drawing straws.
Exactly. Once everyone nodded yes, they all agreed. Owen took off his hat, placed all the pieces in it, and then gave it a good shake. He then stuck out his hat, and one by one the men stuck their hand in, grabbed a piece of paper with a closed fist, and held it to their chest. Once everyone had a piece of paper, they all put their hands in a circle, like palm up, and then opened their hand, revealing who had the short piece. When they looked at their paper, it was Owen who had the short strip. So the guy who asked the question got the short strip. Immediately, George yelled out, "No, let me take that." But Owen said, "No, this is the custom, and I will take it." So after a few moments, letting everybody calm down, Charles then grabbed the logbook again, flipped to the back, and repeated the strip process, but this time there were only 2 long strips and 1 short strip. Once again, each strip was shown to all the men, and they all agreed that it was fair and accurate. That these are the 2 long ones, 1 short one. Mm-hmm. Then Charles takes off his hat, places the strips inside. Once again, they repeat the same process of grabbing one, not showing it to anybody, and then showing them all at the same time. Once the 3 men have taken their pieces, they place their fists in the circle, palm up, and reveal who has the short strip again. Charles sees that he has the short strip this time, and he doesn't take this well. He runs to the other side of the ship and he's yelling, I can't do this, I can't do this, and he's crying. And the other men are just standing there in silence. They know that Charles will calm down and come back over because this was really important to this custom and that he would have to do his part. That's just, there is no ifs, ands, or buts about this.
Well, I see George cares a lot more about Owen than he does about Charles.
You'll find out why in a minute. After a few minutes of Charles screaming and crying, he finally wipes the tears from his face, calms down, and he walks back over to the group, who haven't moved. They're still just perfectly still. They've been standing there in silence waiting for Charles so they can finish the custom. Charles is walking back to the group. George reaches down and unlatches a compartment on the boat, and he pulls out something wrapped in a canvas. He then hands this large object that's still wrapped up to Charles. Once Charles takes it, Owen says to the group, now it's time for a moment of silence. So the group bowed their head in total silence. Once Owen raises his head, the other men did as well.
So whatever this is requires two people?
Yes. So Owen touched each one of the shoulders of each man and reminded them that this had been a fair process. Then without saying another word, Owen turned away from the group. He walked over to the edge of the boat, looking out onto the seas. He got down on his knees, straightened his posture, keeping his eyes fixed out onto the water ahead. Owen had always loved the ocean, even though his own father had actually died at sea. But this particular whaling trip that Owen had been on had gone really well for a while. And Owen was really proud of everything that they had accomplished on that trip. So Owen was especially proud to be a part of this particular thing, and that this is a custom that so few ever took part in, but all sailors knew about it. And it was like the forbidden custom.
What are they, like, making a sacrifice to Poseidon or something?
You just hang on. Sorry, it was a forbidden custom, and here Owen was playing a huge role, which really required a lot of strength and courage.
Wait, why is it forbidden? I'm ready to find out.
Okay.
I want to know.
Yeah, so Owen is feeling particularly proud of himself, and he's staring out in the ocean, and then he places his chin on the boat, like on the edge of the boat, and that's the signal to Charles that Owen is ready. Mm-hmm. So once Charles saw that Owen was in position, Charles stepped away from the others, walked over to Owen, and unwrapped the item in the canvas, and it was a rifle. So once Charles was right behind Owen, he placed the barrel to the back of Owen's head and shot him. Immediately, Owen slumped over dead, and Charles staggered back, falling onto the deck, letting out a very deflated scream. He couldn't believe what he had just done, but he knew that there was no other option. Once the group decided to start, it had to be finished.
Was the question, do you want to play a game?
No, this is not Saw.
I don't know what the hell's going on, but this is insane.
I know. Okay, so you ready?
Hey, guys, I know we're all out here. We're on a ship. We're fine.
Are they fine?
So far as I know so far, they're fine.
I haven't told you.
Who wants to kill each other? What?
I haven't told you if they're fine yet or not.
Okay, maybe they weren't fine. Look,
Okay.
I mean, did the sails rip? Has the mast broken?
Will you just wait a moment?
What kind of trouble are they in that they're going to kill each other to try and get... Oh, wait. Are they...
Will you hang on a second?
Yeah, you tell me.
George, who had just watched the execution of his younger cousin and was deeply troubled by this, he too also knew that he had to take this all the way to the end, which meant it was now George's turn to step forward and do his part. George walked up to Owen's body and pulled out a serrated knife and cut his head off. Once Owen's head was removed, George placed it on the deck facing away from Owen's body and the rest of them, so it would be like Owen couldn't see what's about to happen to him. Then George began cutting Owen's body and taking out his organs and handing them to Charles and Barzillai. George then began cutting off long strips of Owen's flesh, creating fillets. Then, even though the men had a place to build a fire on the boat, they still began to eat Owen. Like, they don't cook him, they just eat him raw.
Mm-hmm. Is that part of the custom?
No.
Okay.
The delicate question that Owen asked the other men in the beginning was the question that all the sailors feared. And you only asked it in a dire circumstance, and only if there was no other chance of survival. The question was, do we draw lots to determine which one of us dies so the others can eat them to have a better chance of survival? So, on February 6th of 1821, the day that Owen posed that question, he and the other 3 men had already been lost at sea for the past 3 months. After a whale had struck the side of their ship, sending them adrift, and then they had almost no food and water at that point, they are absolutely out 3 months later. There had been others on the ship in the beginning, but they had all died from starvation or exposure. Their bodies had been consumed by the surviving sailors until on February 6th, they were down to just the 4 men, and that's why the question had to be asked.
Ah. So I'm guessing these 4 survived long enough that by the time one of us finally just dies, the rest may be too weak. It'll be too late
Yeah.
for whoever dies
Yeah.
to save them.
Yeah.
So someone has to make the sacrifice.
Yeah. There's more.
Okay.
So 17 days after Owen sacrificed himself, another boat actually passed the stranded ship, which now only contained Charles and George. Barzillai had died of starvation 5 days after they killed Owen, and the other 2 had eaten him as well. As the other ship passed the stranded boat, they looked aboard, and all they saw were skeletons of the men who had already died and been consumed. And then Charles and George were on opposite ends of the boat, curled up, chewing on human finger bones. And their bodies were completely emaciated, and like their hair and beards were wild, and they looked completely feral.
Mm-hmm.
Then, when the other ship came aboard to rescue the 2, Charles and George looked terrified, and like they had lost all sense of reality, and they didn't know like where these people came from.
Right.
Basically.
I imagine if this is going on, you're out exposed.
Yeah.
I mean, you could be having hallucinations, or
Yeah.
who knows what's going through your head. That's got to be
Wow.
tough. Yeah.
And then if you think about it, it's down to the last 2 of you.
When it's down to just 2 of you, though,
Yeah.
like, well, it's either he eats me or I eat him.
Yeah.
Might as well fight.
Exactly. So it turned out they had been lost at sea for a total of 94 days, and they had consumed all of their friends, so it makes sense that they would be in a lot of distress. But after the other crew got them fed and gave them water, and they got cleaned up, Charles and George regained some of their composure and were very thankful to be rescued for them.
Yeah, they've been living a nightmare,
Yeah, exactly.
and it's finally over.
Yeah.
That may even be worse.
Yeah.
Because now you have time to think about it.
Yeah.
I mean, I know you had time before.
Yeah, but like you're
But
also
you're-
in survival mode
Yeah,
before.
you're living in it now.
Yeah.
And then now, once you're saved,
Yeah.
you're safe. You have time to reflect.
Yeah. And then, George has to come home and tell his family. That's got to be hard.
Yeah, that sucks.
Yeah, like that would absolutely suck. But so this story actually is extremely popular in sailors. Like a lot of them know the story. And actually, supposedly, it was the inspiration for Moby Dick.
Well, that was definitely dreadful.
I know, right?
I'd like to have more details about how they got in this situation in the first place.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. I don't think when they got home they wrote down their account, because when you're looking for this story, like you find accounts of George said this and George said
It's
that.
all retellings of maybe
Yeah.
close friends that found out some things.
Yeah, and they were like, or things he told about people he told about. Doesn't seem like George or Charles wanted to talk about it.
Well, if you enjoyed the video, give us a like, a thumbs up. Leave us a comment if you have any kind of stories, scary horror stories, paranormal stories, murder stories, or anything just kind of mysterious. Let us know. If something happened to you personally, leave us a comment. Let us know. Let us know what you'd like to hear. Don't forget to subscribe. And if you're on Spotify,
5-star reviews,
please.
please, and thank you.
All right, this is the part where Kirsten says bye.
Okay, bye.